So, you've decided you want to get into playing vinyl records, perhaps for the first time in many, many years, or perhaps for the first time ever, depending on how old you are. You start looking online at what type of turntable you should buy, and that could be a minefield almost immediately. You start to run into moving magnet versus moving coil, direct drive versus belt drive, fully manual versus automatic, brand new versus vintage, all these different things. And it can be paralysis by analysis. And in this video, I'm going to show you a turntable that is cheap, that works very well, and is idiot proof. And I should know because I bought one. So today we're going to be talking about the Marantz TT5005. And the reason that I selected this particular turntable is that when I moved into this flat a couple of years ago, I wanted to build up a stereo system that would allow me to start listening to some of my records again, start collecting CDs again, all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to keep something simple and easy with not much space. It's not a huge amount of space in this flat. So I wanted something compact. I wanted something affordable. And I wanted something, if possible, that was idiot-proof, because, you know, you've met me, right? So the reason I went for the Marantz TT5005 primarily was because it has a built-in Phono preamp. That means that it's one less box in order to connect up. So if you don't know, normally what would happen is you'd have your turntable, and then because the actual sort of sound that comes out of the turntable normally isn't particularly powerful, it needs to go into a pre-amplification stage, which will do some of the amplification before it goes into your main amplifier and then out through the speakers. Correct me, by the way, in the comments below if you've got a better and more technical explanation of that. But basically, if you plug your regular turntable into an amplifier that doesn't have a phono stage built into it, or a separate one, usually it'll just be very, very quiet. So as far as I understand, that's what's happening. So the advantage of this is that it's got that stage built in so that you can plug this into any amplifier. And what I happened to have had before I bought this was a Yamaha AV receiver. It didn't have a phono pre-stage built in, which meant that if I wanted to listen to records with a turntable, I either had to buy a whole separate box and then go and worry about all the different versions of those you can buy, or get something like this where the phono stage was built in. So that's what I did. The second thing, and the second reason that I bought this, was because there is a path to upgrade. So although there is a pre-stage phono stage built into it, you don't have to use it. There is actually underneath the platter in here. If I just take off this, I'll see if I can hold it up and show you while I'm doing it. Try not to disappear the audio behind the dust cover. But if I take off this is aftermarket, by the way, this rather sort of sexy felt slip mat. If you take that off, and then if you take the platter off as well, that should just lift off like that. And by the way, this is a nice cast aluminium platter on this too. So a lot of this is a very basic type of entry-level turntable, and a lot of entry-level turntables, like for example the suitcase ones you get from Crossley and others, will have a plastic platter, and this is cast aluminium, so it's a lot heavier, and it dampens the turning a lot, makes it a lot smoother. And it's also I'll get to the preamp switch in a second, but I'm just picking off things as they fall out. It's belt drive. Now, online, there are some people that will argue that belt drive is the best because, again, you've got the motor isolated from the turning platter by the rubber band, the belt that's in there. Some people prefer that. Some people prefer a direct drive because it's a little more constant, right? But there is, the argument that it can create a little bit of rumble through from the motor. So, again, depending on how much money you spend on this and the quality of the components you use, the bearings, all that sort of stuff, you can argue one way or the other, and it's probably one of those things that will never be resolved in the history of mankind, certainly probably not in the comments of this, although I'm sure people have their opinions. But anyway, belt drive it is. And then underneath here, I shall point to it so you can see, there's a switch in there, and that switch allows you to switch that preamp stage off, so that then what's coming out is hasn't gone through the preamp stage. So these RCA leads on the other end that are sort of permanently attached to it. You can't upgrade the the cable on this, unfortunately, but you take what you can get for the money you pay. But you can if you didn't want to use the inbuilt Phono preamp, you could switch that stage off and then plug this into a Phono preamp stage, and then it would go into your amplification circuit in the normal way. So it does offer a little bit of a way of upgrading the sound a little bit. Not a tremendous amount, but a little bit. So that's that. The other thing that I should say on this is that it is there's no real path to upgrade as far as the cartridge is concerned. It's got a moving magnet cartridge in it. You can change the stylus and have different types of stylus on there, but the actual cartridge itself is just one of these sort of plastic units. I mean, you might be able to change that out, but you probably wouldn't get a lot to fit it. The tone arm is pretty thin and flimsy, and everything is preset on it. There's nothing you can do to adjust the tracking force or anything like that. So there's no tracking force adjuster. There's no weight that you can change on that end. So you can't do anything about that. It comes preset from the factory, and that's it. The advantage of that is that if, like me, you just wanted to get something set up and listen to records and have it sound sort of decent and actually pretty good. I really like the sound quality of this, spoiler alert. It sounds lovely, but you can't get fancy with it. You can't fine tune it. You can't dial it in. If you want to get involved with all of that stuff, you need something where you can, fiddle about with all these things individually, swap them out, upgrade them as necessary, all that stuff. But for something that out of the box sounds really, really good and doesn't require any setup, doesn't require any adjustment, you just put the record on it and play, the Marantz TT5005 is really, really good. The other thing that makes it completely idiot-proof, and another reason why I love it, is that it's fully automatic. So you've got on here a start and stop button, and if you press that start button with the record on it, it will automatically start the platter spinning, and then it will lift the tone arm up, drop it down onto the record and play the record. If you want to stop the record, you press stop, it'll lift the needle off the record, move the tone arm back and set it down in its cradle, without touching the record, without having to drop the needle on. So if you haven't got particularly steady hands or particularly good eyesight, you struggle with those sort of things, then an automatic turntable like this is really, really useful, because you greatly reduce the risk of actually scratching the record or doing anything damaging to it, something like that. The only things that you need to set up in order to do that, on one side here, on that side, you've got a little lever which changes it between 12-inch and 7-inch. Although this being a Japanese model, it calls it 30 millimeters or 30 centimeters or 17 centimeters as opposed to 7 or 12-inch. And then on the other side, you've got just a little push button there, which you press in for 45 and then press the other way, and it's 33 and a third RPM. So provided those are set all right, then the automatic thing will work. So there's nothing in the system that some of the fancier systems will detect if the record is 7-inch or 12-inch or 10-inch. There's no 10-inch setting on this, by the way, so you have to manually drop that on. But some records will detect, some players will detect that, but this one won't. So you have to set that, and then the thing that doesn't really matter is the speed, because if you get that wrong, it'll either be too fast or too slow. It's not going to damage anything, but you can damage the needle if you drop it down onto the sort of furry or rubbery or whatever you've got as your slip mat, and the needle starts scratching around on that. That could damage your needle potentially. But the worst that'll happen if you get the speed wrong is that it just sounds wrong. You just change that and it'll play the right speed. But apart from that, everything is automatic. Now, in terms of the build quality, as you can see, almost everything about it is completely plastic. So if you have a look at underneath there, you can see that all the gears and everything like that are plastic. Other than the tone arm, which is some very sort of thin, cheap kind of metal, and the platter, which it's got a bit of weight to it, but not a tremendous amount, but it's at least not plastic. Everything else is. It's extremely lightweight. The whole thing, I think, weighs about 2.8 kilos. So it's not very heavy, but it does sound really, really good. So, I'm not going to sit here and say it sounds as great as some expensive audiophile turntable. Of course it doesn't. Nor am I going to say that the built-in preamp is as good as a dedicated preamp that is built expressly for that purpose. Of course it doesn't. However, would I choose one of these over something like a Crosley turntable? All day long I would. All day long I would. Absolutely 100% without shadow of a doubt. So, final question. How much does it cost to get one of these? Well, I got lucky. I found this on Facebook Marketplace and it cost me 25 quid. Now, I replaced the needle on it because I think that's good practice. If you're buying a second-hand turntable, you don't really know what the life of the needle has been, and so just replace it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I think it cost about 20 quid, 25 quid, something like that to replace the needle. Not a big deal. So I'm in this for under 50 quid. I did have a look on Facebook Marketplace before I recorded this, and I did have a look on eBay. There was one for sale on each, and both seemed to be about 50 quid, 55 quid, something like that here in the UK. So let's imagine that you spent double what I had to spend and spent 50 instead of 25 quid to get the turntable, and then you had to spend another 20 quid in order to get a stylus. You're up to 70 quid, 75, 80, something like that. Your mileage may vary depending on where you are in the world, what happens to be for sale when you watch this video, and go and have a look yourself. Or if you're watching this 5 years in the future, you know, maybe things will have gone up, maybe things will have gone down, who knows. But it's not going to be a tremendous amount of money, and it's probably going to be about the same as you'd spend on one of those suitcase players. The difference being that the sound quality is going to be much, much better. The quality of materials, although they're plasticky, are going to be better. The sound quality is going to be better, I believe, than one of those things. Not least because the platter is metal, not least because you've got the Marantz brand behind this. It's a well-established audio company that has been making products for many, many years. And although this is very much an entry-level product, it's got their name behind it, it's got their expertise behind it, and yes, they're building it to a price, but it does still sound good. So if you see one of these out there in the wild and it's not particularly expensive, and you're looking for a turntable that doesn't break the bank but that will play your records really, really nicely, I would highly recommend giving it a little poke and seeing what you think of it yourself. So that's it. Let me know below what the best budget turntable that you've ever discovered was, and do you think it's better than the Marantz TT5005, in which case why? I'd love to know that, and perhaps I'll get one and review it on the channel in a future episode. In the meantime, thanks very, very much for watching, and as always, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.